Welcome. Today is the 16th day of Tammuz, the 22nd of July. We're up to the second reading of Pinchas. The whole reading is dedicated to another census of the Israelites. And the reason there's the census is because there was this plague, again, at the end of last week's reading. But, as Rashi says, this census is a little bit different, because each one of the families is called by name, meaning that it's not just based on tribes as the other census were. It's based on families. It's divided into families. It doesn't tell us how much in each family, but it does tell us which families are in each tribe. And this is a deviation from the previous census, as we explained. Why is this? So Rashi says, because families are really dependent on the mother more than on the father. Even the word family comes from the feminine form of a servant, shifcha. In a certain sense, in order to build a family, you need a father and mother, but the mother is giving a lot more than the father. And so the well-being of the family, the strength of the family, all these things really depend on the mother more than on the father. And here, the way that the family names are named, they're not just named by their name, but they have an added letter hey at the beginning and a suffix yud at the end. These two letters, hey and yud, are obviously very important. These are the letters of God's name Yud-Kei, Ka, or the beginning of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the tetragrammaton. And so, Rashi quotes the Medrash that says that by adding this prefix and suffix to each one of the names of the families, God was indicating that they were whole, that they were complete, that even though they have been subjugated in Egypt to terrible suffering, and they had been under the subjugation of the Egyptians, the women did not allow themselves to be tainted in any way, and the families were whole. Now the interesting thing about this is, so I'll just give an example. So we're looking at Numbers 26, verse 5, where it starts. So it says, Reuven, the firstborn of Israel, the children of Reuven were Chanoch. The name of his child is Chanoch. He's one, by the way, in English they call this Enoch, and there are 4 different Enochs in the Torah. And then it says Mishpachat HaChanuchi, the family of the Chanuchi. So the Chanuchi is an added prefix H, that's the, and a Yud at the end makes it HaChanuchi instead of Chanoch. And then he had another son, Palu, Mishpachat HaPalui. He had another, same thing. And then he has another son, his name is Chetzron, Mishpachat HaChetzroni, the family of Chetzroni. And Karmi, his name becomes the family of the Karmi. So that's, first of all, a basis for understanding all of this. But there's something else that really stands out, and that is that if you look at the names, you'll see that that this prefix and suffix are not added only to the family names. On 3 occasions, they're added to the names of the tribes. Which tribes? So we see this in Reuven, 26 verse 7. Ele mishpachot ha-Reuveni. These are the families of the Reuveni. Not the families of the tribe of Reuven, but the Reuveni. Again, he adds the prefix and the suffix. The same thing we see regarding Shimon. And so, in verse 14, Ele mishpachot ha-Shimoni. Shimon also receives this special treatment. Afterwards, we have Gad. God doesn't get that. In 18, look at 18, Ele mishpachot bnei Gad. These are the families of the children of God. He doesn't make it into Gadi. And then the same thing is with Yehuda. And the same thing with Yisachar. But then when we come to verse 27, we find one last time, Ele mishpechot ha-Zevuloni. These are the tribes of the Zvuloni, the Zebulun families. These are the families of the Zebulun. Why these three tribes? Why do they receive as a whole this special treatment? So the way that Rav Ginsburg explains this is that these three tribes had a certain problem with them. What was the problem? The problem was that they could be that they were born from a flawed sexual union between Jacob and Leah, his wife. Why was this? So first of all, we need to know that even though there are flaws that actually make a child into a bastard or something else, there are also spiritual flaws. And the sages talk about this in the tractate of Shavuos, folio 18, side B, and they say that there are 9 types of flawed children. This is in Nedarim 20b, and they say let me read it from a translation, which is a very good translation and gives the whole idea. The sages commend those who sanctify themselves during marital sexual relations, stating that they will merit having good children. This sanctity is not about the halachos, it's not about the laws relating to relations, it's something else. So this sanctity entails the couple concentrating solely on their wholehearted love for one another. The greater their love and the greater their wish for good and righteous children, the holier their sexual union, through which they merit having such children. But then, in contrast, if there's not love and devotion, the more flawed their sexual union, the greater the likelihood of imperfections within their children. The Talmud lists 9 types of flaws in marital sexual relations, as well as the resulting imperfections in children conceived through such unions. These are children, they're known as bnei, the children of fear and rape, the children of antipathy, children of ostracism, children of exchange, we'll see what that means in a moment, children of strife, and that we'll also talk about, children of drunkenness, children of estrangement, children of entanglement, and children of brazenness. So these are situations between the couple. Fear and rape is pretty clear what that is. If a woman doesn't want to have relations and the husband forces it upon her, then obviously that's not a very good relationship. It's flawed, and the children can come out flawed as well. But what we want to talk about is Reuven, Shimon, and Zvulun. Why are they singled out here? So with Reuven, there was a real problem with the exchange, meaning he could be considered a child of an exchange. Why? Because when Jacob married Leah, he didn't think it was Leah. He thought it was Rachel, because that's what he had worked Laban for 7 years, to marry Rachel. Laban was the one who exchanged them, and he brought Leah instead. And so in order to show that still, and we'll get back to this at the end, that Jacob had in mind to be with whomever this is, because he had a sense that Laban could do this to him. So he didn't say, this is only Rachel. And I mentioned this before, they were identical twins. So there was probably no way for him to even know if it was one or the other in the darkness of the night. So he had in mind, and this is not easy, that even though he was not attracted to Leah, he said in his heart, whomever this is, I know that Laban is capable of this, I'm wholeheartedly with her. So that was the problem with Reuven. With Shimon, Leah says herself when he's born that now my husband will love me, because she felt hated. So that's what we call the child of ostracism or of strife. Which one is it? B'nei meriva. So I guess it's strife. That the woman feels that she's not wanted. So that was maybe how she felt, but it was not how Jacob felt. And Jacob, even though he did love Rachel more, he did not hate Leah the way that she felt. That was entirely subjective on our part. And the Torah is like saying here, know that the children of Shimon, that the tribe of Shimon is entirely unflawed. Then, finally, Zebulun is the last child of Leah. And the Torah there, again, adds the Hey and the Yud, HaZevuluni, the Zebuluni tribe. And the reason it adds it there is to say that don't think that somewhere along these 6 children that he had from Leah, Jacob at some point went back on their relationship. No, know that they are all unflawed. But what can we, so this is a very beautiful explanation of why these 3 have this Hey prefix and Yud suffix added to their names. The question is why, what can we take out of this in terms of our own relationships? And Rav Ginsburg stresses that with Jacob, this whole idea that whatever comes to me, I am wholehearted with, is the basis of good marriage. That Jacob was able to say this was nothing light, was nothing simple. The idea behind it is that if you want to have a good marriage, you have to look at everything as directed by God, as by divine providence. And that's the way that Jacob looked at his relationship with Leah. He said, I know I worked for Rachel, and this is going to cost me 7 more years that I was not interested in. And yet still he took it upon himself with a whole heart to love Leah as much as he could, knowing that this, even though it wasn't his choice, it was God's choice. This is how things worked out. The same thing people have to have in their marital relation. They have to feel this, that a lot of times you think that things are not perfect, you think they're not the way you wanted them, and so on. But understand that from God comes a woman to a man, a phrase in Proverbs. Me'isha Hashem le'ish. Me'ashem isha le'ish. From God comes the woman to man. And when the man has this outlook, that everything that I have with my wife is from God, he finds it much, much easier to mend the relationship, not just to mend it, but to have a good relationship all the time. Because really, in the end, the cause for strife in marriage is a feeling of pride, and this pride usually comes from the male. It comes from a feeling that I deserve better, that I should have something else, and so on. And really, all the difficulties that a person has in his home are in order to place his pride in check. And don't think that you're so great the way you think you really are, the way you think you are. You're not. You are being given from God exactly what you deserve. Now, you don't say that when it comes to other things, but when it comes to your home, when it comes to your domestic peace, that's the way you need to look at things. In our day and age, this is also relevant to women, but it used to be mostly relevant to men. Today, maybe it's relevant equally. But it all has to do, all the problems start from the fact that a person feels, I deserve something else. The truth is that God is very careful to give us exactly what we need to have when it comes to our relationship with our spouse. Thanks very much for joining today. Hope to see you tomorrow.